The crisis over opioid addiction in Georgia has prompted a push for so-called brick-and-mortar transition centers. Republican State Senator Renee Unterman is trying to get extra money into the state budget to build those centers. Jennifer Eccles told our Giovanna Derpick it could help have saved her sister, Elizabeth, who died from a heroin overdose.
Jennifer Eccles holds a picture of her beloved sister, Elizabeth.
She was my everything. She was my little baby doll growing up.
Elizabeth was a straight-A student who died from a heroin overdose at the age of 24. The whole family tried to get her help.
I had to actually turn in my IRA in order to go ahead and have her go to a rehab, and that was only for 30 days.
She was in one that was for 6 months, and then they released her. It wasn't enough time.
They have anyone who is
Because there seems to be a critical gap in that kind of help for addicts, State Senator Renee Unterman is pushing for brick-and-mortar transition centers. I specifically asked about funding.
We received $11.8 million of the federal grant. And, I told Judge Schrader, $11.8 million, I can use that much money in Gwinnett County on this issue. That's a drop in the bucket.
Since it's considered a crisis, I asked why a special session wouldn't be called now. Unterman said that would only happen on something like the budget during a recession. She did send a letter to Georgia's congressional delegation asking for current federal funding on addiction services not to be cut. She's trying to get extra money in the upcoming legislative session. It's also that other families won't join grieving parents like Lisa Manning and her husband Greg in suffering the loss of a child.
5 weeks ago this morning, same thing. My husband walked in and was getting dusted up to go to work, and he was already dead.
Our family's still not the same. It's been 4.5 years, and we still set a plate for her at the dinner table at every occasion that we have.
Because Eccles says she and her family want to feel like her kid sister Elizabeth is still a part of her family's celebrations.
And that was Giovanna Derpick reporting. Joining me now is Missy Owen, and Missy's son Davis died from addiction 3 years ago. Missy, I do want to say, our condolences certainly to you and your family, and thank you for taking time for us. And even after watching that piece, I'm sure it never gets easy. It's been 3 years. But tell us about Davis and what happened to him.
Well, Davis was the oldest of 3 boys, but the second in the lineup of 5 children. And we grew up the normal family. My husband and I both worked. We were a very functional family, and he was a part of that family. We went to church every Sunday. We went everywhere together. We were a very tight-knit family. And he was involved in sports. He was involved in student government. He was a little bit of everything. He was everybody's funny friend, and he was just a great kid. He was junior class president, senior class president, Hall of Fame. He was an honor student. He was the yearbook editor. He was just a little bit of everything.
Yeah, all-American boy. And some would say, how did you see any signs that, when they look at this and say, if this can happen to her son, it can happen to anyone?
And it can, and that's so important. And, do you look for signs always? No, because a lot of these kids are becoming addicted because they got a prescription from the doctor for something very legitimate, and all they were doing was following the doctor's orders to take medication, and then by the end of the medication, the child has a full-fledged addiction. They're going into the medicine cabinets and self-medicating. So, there's so many ways that kids are becoming addicted, and there's no rhyme nor reason. It doesn't discriminate. It is an equal opportunity destroyer for sure.
And certainly for your family. Davis, the oldest of 5 children, correct?
The second. He was the oldest boy.
The oldest boy. How has it been for you dealing with your grief, and also you're still raising your family at the same time? Life, unfortunately, still goes on after something like this. How have you been able to cope in these 3 years?
Well, we're a very religious family, so our faith has taken us to where we are now. And we're very tight-knit, like I said, so we were there for each other. We were supporting each other. We delved into the foundation very soon after Davis died because we felt like it was so unnecessary. We needed to make a difference. And educate others so that they would understand that it didn't have to be this way. But turning to God in times of just utter disbelief and no understanding that makes sense of anything was the only thing we knew to do. We did that, and He pulled us through.
And tell us about the foundation.
Well, the foundation was started actually 3 weeks after Davis died. And in 3 years and 4 months, Davis has inspired us to open a 21,000 square foot building called The Zone, a recovery community organization, and we'll gross over $500,000 this year. And we're welcoming people in droves to The Zone. We have over 2,000 a month who come through seeking a safe and sober environment. And the foundation is well on its way to becoming a national model.
Yeah, that is great to hear.
Thank you.
And that is certainly support for people struggling with addiction. What advice would you give to parents who may be concerned, who don't want to turn a blind eye because the epidemic has gotten to a point where you cannot ignore it anymore here in Georgia?
That's so true. And what I say to parents is educate yourself, because as with any disease, you don't necessarily educate yourself about diseases that you don't think your family will have. My husband's a diabetic. I didn't educate myself about diabetes because I didn't expect him to become a diabetic. But this disease is so different because it's the #1 accidental death reason in America today. And if people don't understand what to look for, don't understand how easily it is to take an opioid medication that your doctor prescribes for you, and what the repercussions of that can be, or what the repercussions of leaving an opioid prescription in the medicine cabinet after you've used it, just to sit there for perhaps the next time someone is in pain, and not understanding how important it is to get rid of that medication is something that you really need to educate yourself about. And then also to understand that addiction is a family disease. It's not just the disease of the child who is addicted, it affects the entire family. And as a former guidance counselor in an elementary school, as I came to the end of my career there, I began to see more and more grandparents who are raising their children. And children need to know that their parents are sick, trying to get well, but they need to understand and understand that everywhere you go, if you travel on the streets in your neighborhood, you're in danger because somebody out there is driving drugged.
Yeah, and important things to be aware of. Missy Owen, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Well, still ahead, we want to give you a look at body cam footage of police officers dealing with an overdose call, and we'll tell you how first responders are training to deal with opioids that put them at risk too. That's right after the break.